edition of Mark's Inspiration, The Power is Within podcast. And I'm doing it up here in my office tonight because it's just me and someone is honking the horn. So we're going to talk about marriage for love. Think about that. We all grew up thinking you had to love someone to marry them. But in many countries in the world, love has nothing to do with marriage. Actually, they have arranged marriages. Sometimes the parents have to approve and actually kind of pick out the person from the different suitors that want to date the daughter. Only here in America, in the Western world, and some of the other countries, do we marry because we are in love. And I'm not sure if you guys know it or not, but the story of Romeo and Juliet was not a tragic love story. It was tragic. It was a warning written to advise people about the dangers of this romantic love, this infatuation, this honeymoon stage love, where a man or a woman would do anything to be with the object of their love. That's more of an obsession. I will say this, the last woman I married, it lasted 12 years, and I did not marry her because I loved her. I married her for practical reasons. I wanted to have 15 kids, and I went out of the country and met some different girls and met her and really didn't know her, didn't love her. And it actually lasted longer than any of my other marriages. And had I known then what I know now, I probably would still be married to her. Although I wouldn't change a thing because my life is great today. But I'll get into that later about support. And when you meet girls from other countries, what sometimes they expect from you, especially if you're from a third world country, which seems odd to us because we have grown up in a country where, at least since the 60s, and I'm older than most of you, where women have been able to take care of themselves for many years. Fortunately, because men have set up systems and structures to allow them to do that. So they don't need the direct support of a man, although most of them do rely on the support from the system, which is operated by men, whether it be child support, the police force for protection, the Army, the Navy, the Marines, etc. All basically men in systems and, structures, units to protect and provide for men, women, and children, and the men too, of course. So we'll get into that in a little while. But when did that start? The reason I brought this up is because in other countries, I guess I was married for 12 years to a girl from Latin America. Now, in Latin America, there are many poor people, of course, third world countries, and they depend upon the children to support the family. Now, in this case, my ex-wife's mother had 6 girls and 1 boy. So she was depending on those children to support her when she got older. Now, some of you might think, well, what the heck's that? Why should the kids support the parent? Well, they don't have Social Security. They don't have all the safety nets we have here to provide for older people. They don't put the old folks in a nursing home unless they're very rich, and you have the rich and the poor down there. There's no middle class, which is kind of what we're moving towards here, it seems like in the U.S., but still our country is extremely rich compared to most of the world. But had I known that, and it's not a matter of greed or of trying to get money out of you, it's a matter of survival for the parents. So the parents raise the children, and the children survive because of the parents, of course. And then when the children get old enough to work, they help support the parents. They group together and help support the parents. Down there, many of them all live together. You have the cousins, the uncles, the aunts, the fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, wives, all that. They all live in the same, sometimes the same house, sometimes in the same common area. They have different houses, but they're all connected by a common area. And they do this because of financial reasons and because it's been the way the culture has been for generations. It's very wise. If you notice when the Spanish people come up here from Mexico, Honduras, Guatemala, Colombia, wherever they come from, many times in a 2-bedroom house, there'll be 8 or 10 people living there. And the bigger the house, the more people live there. it actually makes more sense, especially financially, than what we do here in the U.S. with our nuclear families. We leave the parents and then we marry and we stay with the wife and we have our kids and we live in the house. So this is really practical. Back to the point here, my wife, I married her and I did not support the family because coming from the United States, I thought that was, they just wanted money from me. But looking back now, I realized that they needed money from their daughter. Now, she wasn't working because I wanted a traditional marriage, so she stayed home with the kids and was a homemaker, housewife, whatever you'd like to call it. But she had no way to send money back except through me, and I didn't do it because I was ignorant of the way things are in other countries. Because we're kind of raised up here to think if a woman wants money, that she's a gold digger. And there are gold diggers out there, of course, but this is not a situation of gold digging for these women in these other countries. Although there are women there who are gold diggers too, but in general, they need, if they marry, they need that husband to help support their parents and their birth family. Now, unless, of course, there are exceptions where if she has a lot of brothers and they can do it, but really they're all expected to support the parents. That's why they have so much of a closer bond with their family down here. The first time I went to Guatemala, I seen all these guys walk around with their arms around each other and old women and young women holding hands and girls from the school walking down the street and they all got their arms around. I'm thinking they're all gay. I mean, I was ignorant, but that's the way they are. They're a closer family. They're more family bonding than we are up here in the U.S. Even my boys and my daughter, they're half Spanish, half Guatemalan. My boys have a relationship like they're friends. I mean, I never had that with my brother. It's just amazing how they bond together. If anybody messes with one of them, they're all there. I mean, they just stick together. And that's something I really admire about them. It makes me proud to see that. They have a good time together. We work together, they joke like, they don't act like brothers. Very seldom do they ever get in fights with each other. So it's really interesting the difference in the dynamics of the family structure. But back to my point here, I know in the U.S., I know the young guys, you young guys out there, if you're listening, some of you are in a dilemma about who should pay when you take out a girl. Okay, and I understand that because nowadays it's so, and then we got these girls wanting to date they got you in their phone as Uber and what are some of the other ones, food and different things. They go out with guys just to get things from them. I'm not talking about that here in this video. What I am talking about is people who genuinely need a man to support them. And if you can't support your woman and help out her and her family, as their culture demands, then really you're not much use to her. Because I have dated other girls from other Latin American cultures, and the woman is providing money for the family, for the parents, for the grandparents, for the aunts even, and the brothers are too. So if you marry that woman and you want a traditional marriage where she stays home, where's she going to get any money to help out her family unless you give it to her? But a lot of guys up here, because they've been raised in this culture, look at this as a bad thing. Oh, they just want money. They just want your money. Well, it's really not how it is. They need your money. And contrary to a woman up here who only wants to marry you, let's say she marries you because she's in love with you. And she just wants to be with you because of who you are. Well, if who you are is not able to support her after you get married and your children, she may not stay with you very long. And if she does pick you and choose to stay with you, you're not going to be a very good husband. Because a good husband, a traditional husband, is a provider. And many guys say they want a traditional wife. Well, are you a traditional husband? I hear them say they want a traditional wife, but yet they don't want to support her, or they want her to pay for half the bills and half of it. That's not a traditional wife. A traditional wife stays home. Let's see, I Googled it here. Let's see what they say about traditional wife. Well, we'll start off with the ideal of marriage for love, because until 150 years ago, we didn't marry for love. It says, when was the radical idea of marrying for love written? In the 1920s, a group of intellectuals invented a new word for love between spouses because they thought such a radical idea to marry for love is required and had it own was required to have its own special label. So it wasn't until the 1850s. What was the reason for marriage in the 1800s? Many of you guys don't know this. Marriage was seen to encourage social stability, good social behavior, and moral behavior, and allowed secure transfer of property within family. It had a strong religious meaning, a joining of two people by God for life. The importance of marriage meant that it was supported and protected by the state and the justice system. Well, for you guys who haven't been married, marriage is not supported or protected by the state. Quite the contrary, when you marry someone here in the U.S., and I don't advise any young man to get married. Now, that doesn't mean you can't find a good woman, a good traditional woman, and get married and stay married, but the odds are against you. Maybe your chances are better at winning the lottery. No, it's not quite that bad. But the problem is, when you marry her, you marry the court system, and she has all the power. I mean, if she gets mad at you one day or decides she fell out of love with you, because a lot of women don't know how to commit these days. Just like every year they want a new iPhone because they need something different, and then they haven't even figured out how to use the iPhone from the year before. A lot of women get tired of men and they want something different, and they're almost encouraged to live their truth instead of staying committed and getting through those times when you don't feel like you're in love. Because I'm going to tell you what, buddy, I've been with some beautiful women, and it don't matter how beautiful they are, after 6 months, the new wears off. And that's when you got to decide and make a conscious choice to love this woman, to do what you're supposed to do if you are a traditional man or you're a traditional woman. So don't go looking for a traditional woman if you're not willing to pay the bill. Because traditional men pay the bill, and traditional women stay home. How are they going to have anything unless you buy it? So that's something to think about the next time you're squabbling over whether you should pay for the meal or she should pay for the meal, or the coffee, or whatever the hell you're going out. When I take somebody out, I'm buying. Now, if they offer to pay, I'll let them pay. But if not, I mean, think about this. I've taken women to the Caribbean, I've gone to different countries and met women, I've done all kinds of things like that. I'm going to ask her, let's say I took a woman let's say I wanted to go to the Caribbean to, I don't know, Aruba, or the Bahamas, or San Andreas, and I wanted to take somebody from here. What am I going to do? Oh, are you going to pay your own flight? Are you going to pay half? If you're asking her to go, then you're going to pay. Why in the hell wouldn't you if you're a man of means? And if you're not a man of means, then you shouldn't be going unless you want to go by yourself. Now, I'm not telling you to offer her this trip so you can get something from her. What I'm saying is, if you want to go to a place like that, and you would like to take a beautiful woman with you, you can't expect her to pay. You just assume you're the man, you're going to pay. Now, some of you are going to say, oh, well, she's just going with you for the trip. Why do you think women go with men anyway? For any reason. What do you think the reason is? Because they're going to get something out of it. If it's not a trip, if it's not money, if it's not just to be with the guy, just to have sex with, they all got a reason, just like you do. Why are you with that woman? You want to have sex with her. Now, if you knew there was no chance of you ever having sex with her, would you date her? Probably not. Okay, so, in the reverse of that, you got to be fair with women. In the reverse of that, if she knew there was never a chance of you paying for anything, or taking her anywhere, or doing anything for her materially, would she go with you? Probably not. But see, these are practical things. These are things I've learned through the years. Sure, I've been in love, and I've had girls just go crazy to be with me, and I've had the girls leave their family, their country, their jobs. I could go on and on about that. Sure, they were madly in love with me, but they were getting something out of it. It may not have been a trip, it may not have been a nice ring, it may not have been some clothes, it may not have been anything like that. but they were getting something out of it, a feeling. I provided a feeling for them. And when I was married in my 20s, I had a wife, I had two steady girlfriends, and I had other girls I was sleeping with. All these girls wanted to be with me. Did I buy them anything? Sometimes I did, sometimes I didn't. But I provided them with a feeling. So regardless of how they're getting that feeling, they're looking for a feeling. And women, they're more moved by their feelings and their emotions. So however you can move them emotionally and get them to feel, then that's what they're going to stay with you for. I heard once you can do anything you want to with a girl, but don't bore her. You got to piss them off once in a while. They want to be pissed off. They want to be told no. So that's something to think about. Let's move on here. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment. I'll try to read them. I'm on my camera here, so the writing is small. But if I can get them fast, I'll try to answer them for you. Now it says, did people marry for love in the 19th century? By the beginning of the 19th century, marriages for economic and social purposes were falling out of popularity. Instead, the evolution of the family unit led to a heightened societal value for marriages based on mutual affection, emotional satisfaction, and love. So see, for thousands of years, people didn't marry for love. This is something that just came about in the last couple hundred years. And I really don't think it's working too good here in the West, to be honest about it. So I looked up where's it? Okay. You guys want a traditional woman. I looked up what is a traditional man. Well, it's kind of negative here. This is Google, so the first part it talks about traditional masculinity. As you guys know, masculinity is somewhat under attack. So here's the definition. Traditional masculinity itself, and this is Google's definition, the term refers to a Western concept of manliness that relies and sometimes over-relies on stoicism, dominance, aggression, and competitiveness. Now that kind of paints it in a negative light that I don't necessarily agree with that, but that's what they said about masculinity. Okay, what are the characteristics of a traditional man? Let's see what they got to say here, and I will tell you whether I agree or not. Traditional masculinity, this goes back to masculinity, characterized by instrumental personality traits such as aggression, self-affirmation, social dominance, and lack of consideration for others. Right there, that tells you that masculinity is under attack, because that's not really what masculinity is. But that's the picture they're trying to paint of it in our modern society. That's the agenda they're trying to push. And these traits are internalized in childhood and adolescence. Masculinity has nothing to do with dominance, or no. It can be dominated, of course, and it can be aggressive, but lack of consideration for others, that's completely opposite. Do you think the men, the masculine, aggressive men who aggressively gave their lives on the Titanic had a lack of consideration for others? Or do you think those young men, some 12 years old, 16 and 17 and older, that stormed the beaches of Normandy on D-Day, had a lack of consideration for others? So think about how they're trying to paint masculinity now as in the reality of how it is. So you can see what we got going here. And when you got kids growing up with this, they read that and think, oh man, I don't want to be aggressive or be inconsiderate of others, dominate people, self-affirmation. I'm not quite sure what they mean by that. Self-affirmation, I think, is good. If you don't affirm your greatness, nobody else is going to. Not that you have to go tell everybody else that you're great, but you get the point. Okay, now here we have, what does a traditional man want in a woman? Let's see how close they are here. Both men and women consistently cite emotional stability and maturity as one of the most attractive traits in a potential spouse, while men often fall victim to the stereotype of prioritizing physical attraction, and we do too. But as I told you, I don't care how beautiful she is, after 6 months, you're going to get tired of her if you guys don't get along. And that's when you got to start working a little bit at your love, making a choice to love. It's easy before that. When it comes to a potential wife, they want a woman who is grounded and secure in his self. Well, that's pretty good. Here we go. Let's see what Google says about the role of a man in a relationship. A real man commits to the relationship fully. Well, I agree to that. He is loyal to his partner and knows that relationships take hard work to keep strong and healthy. His affection to his woman is a full-time commitment. I don't know about that. That's like, to me, that's putting too much emphasis on the woman, making her too important. She's important, but you can take that as putting her ahead of your vision and your purpose. He nourishes and strengthens a relationship through ongoing, honest communication and teamwork. Well, that's not too bad. All right, let's go on to we'll see what the definition of a traditional woman is. A married woman who chooses to be a homemaker as a primary occupation. See, it is an occupation. It's an occupation and a career that gets belittled here in the U.S. It's not given near the admiration and praise that it deserves. And thus we have women in the workforce that sit there and talk about how they wish they could stay home and take care of their kids. And they could if they really wanted to, if they had a traditional man who knew, who knew how to take care of the family, provided so the woman could stay home. I mean, I've never wanted any of my wives to work, nor have they had to work. But yet they got belittled. People would ask them, well, don't you work? I stay home and take care of the kids. Well, you don't have a job? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, no sick days. That's what raising kids is for a woman. Now, I know that because I raised mine by myself for the last 12 years and ran a business. So it was very difficult without a woman here. And you just don't get any days off. But when a man and a woman works together to raise kids, that's the best environment for them. A man cannot raise children as well as a woman with a man, nor can a woman raise children as well as she by herself as well as she can with a man. It takes two to have optimal growth and maturity, emotional stability for kids. But the reason I started this was because I'm going back to the women from other countries. A lot of guys go out of the country so they can get a traditional woman, right? Well, then don't expect her to come here and work, or don't expect to go there and have her work, and don't expect her to not want some money for her family. And how's she going to have any money? If she's not working, she's working for you. She's working for the family. Then you need to take care of her. And you've got to start out doing that when you're dating her. I'm not talking about throwing money at her, throwing gifts at her, but I'm talking about a traditional man pays the way. I've done that since I've been going out with girls, if it was necessary. Now, like I said, when I was younger, I just picked girls up at parties and took them out and we had fun together. But that was different. When a woman gets to where she's looking for a man to settle down with, and now it's a little, I'm not talking about here in the States because a lot of times they'll run the gamut until they're about 30 and then they look for someone that's going to provide and protect. So if you want that, that's fine. That's really not what I'm interested in. But if you want to go out of the country to find a traditional woman, remember, you need to be that traditional man. You need to be able to provide and protect her. You need to be able to support her, and if her family needs help, you're going to be expected to do that. Now, as I said, if she comes from a wealthy family, that's a little different, but most of them don't. Okay, and if they do, they're not real interested in going out with gringos. I mean, it can happen, but it's not common. Gringos from South America or Latin America. But they are still more grounded in family values. And as I said at the beginning, the bonding that they have as a family is very different than what we have up here. And I'll tell you something else. If you decide to marry, hey, what's up, Affy? If you decide to marry a girl from Latin America, the cultural difference between families, you really better get ready for that because she is going to continue a strong regular relationship with their family if they're down there or if they're up here. And that means talking to them probably every day. Now that's something we're not used to up here, at least I wasn't. I went and got married, I may have talked to my parents for a couple weeks. I have a brother I haven't talked to for a couple of years. I don't know what's going on with him, but we used to see each other about 6 times a year, and he lives only 15 miles away from me. So very different with Latin culture. They're really tight with their family. They may call their parents and talk to them every day. And if they're around here, they're going to want them to come over to visit. Well, we have a little bit of a rainstorm starting, and I got the windows open, so I might have to go shut my window. So remember, cultural differences do make a difference. And as I said, if I knew then what I know now, I would have probably still been married to my first wife because I would have helped out her family and they would have encouraged her to stay other than kind of encouraging her to leave because they couldn't survive without getting support from, and it wouldn't have been a lot, maybe a couple hundred bucks a month. I could have paid that. I just didn't want to. As I said, I grew up in this culture and I thought, what the hell is this? But as we grow older and we learn more, I'm not as ignorant about how other cultures are. Like I say, they're not gold diggers. They need that to survive. What would you do? How would you feel if you came from a country and you knew as you were growing up that you needed to take care of your parents? And then you got put in a position later on with your wife and she threw a fit because you wanted to spend money that was your money together with her to help take care of your family. How would you feel about that if she didn't want you to, or if it just made a big problem? So you got to look at it from their point of view instead of looking at it like they just want your money. Of course they want your money. American women want your money. They want your support. I have a daughter, 16 years old. Do you think I want her to marry somebody that works at McDonald's or someone that works at Boeing or someone who's an entrepreneur making 6 figures a year? Of course I want the 6-figure guy. I mean, given all things equal, if they're both good men, I'll choose the 6-figure guy. I want her to marry a guy who can provide for her. I don't want her marrying a guy who's going to ask her to pay half the bill. I really don't want her to marry a guy who's going to want her to work. If she wants to have kids, she needs to stay home and be a mother. This is my belief. And she needs to take care of him. And his job is to take care of her. And they work together as a unit, each person in their place. Now, a lot of people think that's outdated. But is what we're doing today working with a 50% divorce rate, 70% being initiated by the woman, and if they're educated, I think it goes up to 80 to 85%. So this new model doesn't seem to be working very well. And also, people marrying because they're in love or they're infatuated. This wears off too. Go ask Gaffy Kingdom. That guy's got a lot of experience with women. He'll tell you the same thing. No matter how beautiful they are. Now, you guys that don't get laid very often. What do we got here? Hey, what's up? Duque. I put my glasses on to see that because it's on the camera and it's small. Hey, thanks for joining me. Lost my train of thought. I was somewhere with supporting women. But if you want your woman to stay home, if you want a traditional woman, then you have to be man enough to support a traditional woman. I think I was telling you to ask Gaffy Kingdom. He's known a lot of girls, and no matter how beautiful they are, after 6 months, that beauty wears thin. Okay, but you're going to wear thin too if you're not supporting her and you're not providing for her. You guys, a lot of times, I've done this too. You get into a relationship, you become comfortable, and you stop doing the things that you were doing that made her fall in love with you. Then all of a sudden she's not sleeping with you, she's not being this attentive, and you're wondering why this is happening. I gotta shut my window, it's pouring. And you're wondering why this is happening. You're not being the man that you were when she met you. So how do you expect her to be the woman she was when you met her? You're the leader, you lead by example. It's not so much what you say, more truth is caught than taught. And I'm telling you what, it's going to be a rain out here. So, I'm going to have to get off here. Hey, thanks for joining me. Thanks for commenting in the chat. Hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll catch up with you next Saturday night. Take care.